Hi there. So I've had a few questions about how I make my CAULIRICE, which I find to be much better than buying it from the store. I use a food processor and I use a food saver for storage. You could easily use Ziploc bags or other freezer storage containers as you see fit. This is just something that I have on hand, so I like to use it. My first step is going to be washing up this cauliflower and then toweling it dry. Usually each of these heads of cauliflower are less than $3, and I can typically get almost 2 pounds of CAULIRICE per individual crown. So it really makes it a lot more cost effective than buying pre-riced cauliflower in the produce section or in the freezer zone. And if you go to Sam's Club, you can find giant heads of cauliflower for roughly $3 to $4. And if it's a giant head of cauliflower, I can typically get 3, almost 4 pounds of CAULIRICE per crown or head of cauliflower. So after I've got that cauliflower cleaned up, I'm going to remove all of these leaves because I like to cut the stems off of the cauliflower. I just find that it makes less mess for me personally rather than trying to just chop through all of the heads of the cauliflower. And I like to cut this into smaller little florets to make it easier on my food processor. And I generally like to slice those stems in half. Again, it makes it more consistent for the texture throughout in the processor. I find that if I cut the tops of the cauliflower off directly, I wind up with a lot of little crumbly pieces everywhere, which feels like a waste to me. In the past, I have gone through and used my cheese grater to grate up cauliflower or quote-unquote rice up the cauliflower, and that generally works fine. It makes a little bit bigger of a mess and has more waste for me personally, so I much prefer using a blender or my food processor here. I have a Ninja Auto IQ that came with not only the large pitcher blender portion, but also this food processor portion. With this particular machine, I'm able to food process, and I like to do this about 20, possibly 25 times to get it to the right consistency. I personally prefer a very small riced up texture. This is probably a little bit more fine than what you would find in the produce aisle with the ready-made CAULIRICE. So now I'm just going to line a bowl with a flour sack towel, and then I'm going to just repeat this process of cutting up my little florets and processing them in my Ninja Auto IQ processor deal and dumping it into this bowl. Now that I've got everything done, I'm going to wrap up my CAULIRICE with this towel, and I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator overnight. This helps to draw out some of the excess moisture from the CAULIRICE so that I don't wind up with a lot of ice crystals in my CAULIRICE. I'm now going to package up this CAULIRICE with my food saver, and I like to do this with my kitchen scale. As you can see, I'm kind of propping the bowl up on top of another bowl just so I can read my numbers more easily. And I'm going to make this into 4 bags of CAULIRICE. First step is to cut the bags and then seal them up. And what I do with my scale is I will do kind of like a negative measurement. So I will weigh how much I remove every time that I put my scoop into my bowl here. This ensures that I get 4 equal volumes or weights in my bags here because I decided to divide it into 4 bags. And it just, I know it's not necessary, I could just eyeball it, but whenever it comes to cooking the CAULIRICE, you know, a week later, 2 weeks later, a couple of months later, I kind of like having that consistent weight in every bag. And because I was only doing 4 bags this last little bit, I'm trying to divide it out as equally as possible. So I'm taking some out of the bowl, seeing how much that weighs, and just kind of adjusting as needed. Originally I put 12 ounces in each bag, and so now I'm just evening out the last bit. And I like to dust off the opening of the bag in order to make sure the seal works well. This uses heat in the food saver to meld the bag together, like melt the plastic onto itself. Because everything in here is cool and chilled, I'm not concerned about leaching any chemicals, and I believe these bags are BPA free anyway, so I'm not as concerned with it. And I also like to flatten each bag out so that it's faster to freeze and a really quick thaw whenever I'm ready to use each of these. The last thing to do is make sure that everything is labeled before you pop it into the freezer. I like to add what the item is, the date that it's going into the freezer, and how much it is approximately. You can see there I said approximately 15 ounces, which is the perfect amount for myself and Jared. And these are going to go into my deep freeze and wait for another day. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.